Okay, thank you very much. We are now back in open session. However, we have been at it now for some time, so I would like to call a break until if it's at 4:27 right now. So if we could call a break until 4:35 and be back ready to continue. Have 4:35, so if everyone wants to retake their seats, and we'll make sure that Councillor McKay is online as well. Let's see if he's got his camera turned on. Okay, excellent. All right, so we have now come back out of closed sessions. So at this point in time, then I think we can then move on to the report item number 5, correct? Okay, then Director Spicer, the floor is yours. Oh, sorry. To put it on the floor. Okay, sorry, my apologies. We'll look for a mover and a seconder first in order to get it on the floor that the report FRRP 2723 financial impact assessment of Rockwood Terrace project be received, and that staff be authorized to prepare such bylaws as may be necessary to apply to Infrastructure Ontario to borrow $108 million for the redevelopment of Rockwood Terrace. In order to enter into the discussion, may I ask for a mover and a seconder. Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKay, seconded by. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. So it's now on the floor for discussion. And with that, then I would like to begin with the floor over to Director Spicer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sarah, could I get you to put the presentation slides up? I've just got a few slides that I'll use to speak to the report. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on the information that you've seen in Mr. Rodriguez's report, so based on the project estimates, the ministry funding, and the timing of the cash flows we expect to spend in 2023 to 2026, a $108 million debt would be required in order to fund this project. So the way it would work is we would take a construction loan out that would finance the project, pay interest over the duration. And then once we're done construction, or perhaps we would divide up and we would do 2 debentures as we did with Lee Manor, they'd be converted into 25-year debentures, which again matches up to the length of time the province provides construction subsidy. So in order to proceed with an Infrastructure Ontario loan application, borrowing bylaw is required. Based on the $108 million borrowing estimate, when we debenture the project, an annual debenture payment of principal and interest of $5,272,000 will be required. And that's after taking into account the subsidy that would come from the province annually. So that project price, it's based on a number of assumptions, including when we're going to have to flow costs to the vendors, the interest rates. This has been done with 4.5% interest rate. The rate when the report was finished was 4.55% and 4.33% today. And that results in a $72.2 million in interest over the 25-year term. And right now, construction loan interest is 4.88%. Ministry funding. So the ministry last fall announced a construction fund subsidy. So it's available to nonprofit operators, and that includes municipal. And we have to be able to start construction by the end of August. They provide a $35 per diem with the option to convert $15 of it into an upfront grant And that can be used to reduce the construction loan interest. And then the remaining $20 is provided over the length of the subsidy, again, the 25 years. Now, if you take the $15 up front, they don't give you the full amount. So over 25 years, that $15 is $136,000 and change. If you take it up front, they give you $81,000. So it's a discounted present value because the province would be giving it to you over 25 years, and instead they're having to find the money to give it to you up front. So instead of receiving $17,520,000 over 25 years, we would receive just over $7 million less, so $10,368,000 this year. And they would give that to you when you started construction. This chart's a little busy, but it just goes to show the various components. So the planning grant, we've known about that $250,000 for many years, and they gave it to you when you finally have an application. So we received the $250,000 late last year. The construction fund subsidy grant, that's that $15, shows the 17.5 million, the discount if we take it early. And my report speaks to the fact there is an advantage if you take it early. Even though you lose the $7 million, you're making that up by using that to offset the amount you're having to borrow in interest. The base construction funding of the $20.78, that's an annual amount of just shy of 1 million. They pay that over 25 years. There's a medium home component, which is 75 cents. And again, that provides you $35,000 a year. Those items did not change from what was previously provided in the funding allocations. There was a small amount that they did away with, and then in place, they came out with this construction grant. The $20 top up, you would get that annually. So that's the $934,400. There's a development grant. The maximum is $29,246 per bed. That's based on you meeting a number of what is eligible components. And based on our project cost, we would have no trouble meeting that. And that gives just over $3.7 million. And that's paid when the first resident takes occupancy. So you can see that over the 25 years, it's just under $63 million in funding. And then what we've looked at is the construction grant, the discount if we take it early, and the top up. And those amounts equal $33.7 million.
Go ahead.
Just a qualifier, that's on the 128 long-term care beds.
Yes, thank you for your question, Councillor McQueen. You're correct. There is no funding modeled in this for the assisted living. This is purely the 128 long-term care beds. When we talk about debt and annual repayment limit, so the county's debt management policy states that our annual debt, whether that's internal and external, should not exceed 10% of own source revenue. And the provincial limit on the annual repayment limit, also called the ARL, gives a 25% threshold. The 2023 ARL just came out. 25% is just under 17.6 million. And based on that, 10% is just under 8.1 million. And after you take into account our internal debt, so the amount that we borrowed from ourselves for the renovation in addition to this building, for the Grey Gables roof, paramedic service base at Chatsworth, et cetera, we have just under $7.3 million room remaining. After a net repayment of $5.7 million, $5,270,000, we'd be left with just under $2 million for other annual debt repayments. And based on a 25-year borrow at 4.5% interest, this would be a $29.3 million borrow that there'd be available capacity for. And just as a quick snapshot, what other projects require funding? These are the ones that we know of at this time. So the supportive housing project in Owen Sound, the one that's being finished up on 14th Street West, the future paramedic base in Durham that's in the 10-year capital, and an affordable housing build in Dundalk. What's in the 2023 budget? $67.9 million levy requirement that funds operating and capital expenditures of $225 million this year. It includes a levy requirement for redevelopment of the $1,361,000. That's the amount we've been putting away each year. That was the debenture payments for Lee Manor. 1% levy increase this year equals just shy of $670,000. To reach an estimated levy requirement of the $5,270,000, we require an increase in the levy of 7.8%. We could phase that in over the next several years. We would have to start using some of that money to pay the construction interest. So it's not like we would be transferring it to reserve for use in 2026. We would be using it over those years. The $5.27 million doesn't take into account the increase in operating costs for long-term care, resulting from the addition of 28 residents and a larger building footprint. And when we did the simple math of you add 28 residents based on the levy requirement currently, you're looking at $570,000 extra, and that's in today's dollars. And we know that with inflation, we're going to have to extrapolate that by the time the building opens. Future budget pressures. We have rising capital and renewal and replacement costs. We don't have a quantified impact of the cost to address climate change targets. We have recommended operational adjustments from the reviews for paramedic services and transportation. We have cost of living increases, and we have the impact of Bill 23, both with the impact of the bill itself, inflation and interest rates on, and what that will do to development charge revenue over the next few years. 10-year capital. The 2023 to 2032 10-year capital forecast had a proposed levy requirement of almost $306 million, with almost $20 million of that amount in 2023. 64.4% for transportation, 30.4% for human services. Human services includes social services, childcare, housing, long-term care, and paramedic services. And in contrast, the 2023 approved budget has a levy of $14 million or $4.7 million less than the forecasted amount. That, I'll turn it over and I'll ask for any questions.
Okay, just before we go to any questions, I just want to ask CEO if she has anything she'd like to add.
I think there's a lot of numbers here, and it's sometimes really difficult to put it all into perspective. I think one of the things that strikes me is that this new expense, when we look at another $6 million a year, for example, our net median growth that we've seen in Grey County over the last 10 years has been $664,000 a year. That's what we've seen in growth. In the last 5 years, we've had a bit of a bump. In the last 5 years, it was about $1.2 million a year. So that suggests, and I'm not sure economically where we're going to be and what we're going to see as far as that growth trend going forward. It's difficult to forecast exactly how many, occupancies we're going to see, how many new businesses we're going to see, especially if the economy slows down a little bit. But is it reasonable to say that it is going to take us somewhere between 5 and 10 years of growth to catch up to this new expense? It was one way of looking at that. And again, the impact that has on all of the other demands for project funding across the corporation.
Okay, thank you. So there is a lot to digest, and I do also recognize that half of the Grey County Council members are new and have not been part of the process that have gone before. So there could be some questions about some of the historic some of the historic timeline in this as well, to compare where things were back then and where things are right now. So given that, then I'd like to ask if members of the task force would like to raise their hand if there is something they would like to ask to either the staff members or provide a comment in this moment of discussion that we have. Councillor Mackey, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. There's probably lots of questions to be asked right now, but I'm not sure that it's fair to all members of council, not for them to hear that information too. So I moved that this be put on the floor, but I'm not in favor of the going out for $108 million in debt right now. So I would like to, procedurally, whether we defeat this motion and we receive it for information, but I really believe that we need to have a special meeting, of all of council. Some of that meeting would need to be in closed session, and I would leave that to the Madam CEO and the clerk and the warden to establish how much is in closed session. But I believe all of council needs to have some soul searching in regards to all this information, and I just don't think it's. I mean, I've received all the information I need today to know that it needs to go to our entire council. And as you indicated, half the council is brand new to all of this, and some of it could be done under training. Likely, I don't know all the details of what we can do. I have some sense of it, but it's such a big moment for Grey County that we need to get it right. And that means having all the information and all members of council hearing that information. So I'll leave it with you, but I'm not in support of putting the county on the hook for $108 million loan right now in light of the information we've received today. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you. Yes, you are indeed correct. We do have this motion on the floor, and a motion to amend the main motion can't just be a negative. It can't just be just to say no to that. So I do believe that you are correct that we would have to follow through, take any further discussion on this motion. If it is voted down, then that would allow us the opportunity to put forth a new motion. Just going to ask for consultation with our clerk. Okay, so in consultation with the clerk, there are also two other options. One is to refer it to our whole council. That would allow our whole council to chime in and say, this is not what we're looking for. We would like something else instead. And the other would be to defer this decision and keep it deferred until we can take things back to the whole of council via a special meeting. Okay, I can see CEO Wingrove. Would you like to provide a comment to that?
I would be in favor of a referral to the entire council, and that way Mary Lou's report can be discussed in its entirety and in some detail.
Okay, Warden Milne.
I think that would be a prudent action to take, because there's a lot of implications to going down this path of borrowing $108 million, not the least of which I think a lot of lower tier municipalities have come to rely on the county having a low levy increase annually that softens somewhat the local levy increase. If we follow through on this project or this expense, it's going to be the other way around. The county levy increase is going to increase the lower tier increase. So, and that's just one implications. I think there's a lot of other implications to the 10-year budget, capital, not the least of which. You know, what sort of things are we going to stroke off the list that we just can't afford going down the road that we have no idea we even need yet? So I think we're well advised to defer this to the rest of the council and let them see this report, let them mull it over and come to their own decision.
Okay, thank you. There was a hand from Councillor McKay. I'd like to give him the opportunity to question or comment.
Yeah, I think I started off the meeting back an hour or so ago saying that I agree with our CEO that I don't want to see the county bankrupt. I do think it has to be a decision that's made by the full council, because we're going to get a lot of questions and a lot of comments when we do have a special meeting. So if somebody is making that motion that it goes back to refer to the full council, I support that 100%.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments before we have a look at the motion to defer? Councillor McQueen.
There we are. Yeah, I would move that motion to defer it, but I think if we motion to defer, I think there needs more information to come back. Other than what you have here, but like in-depth information, like in the sense of a lot of stuff and options and different things, because this is 108 is the big picture, and are there other options of a smaller picture? So I would move that motion to defer it to a larger conversation with all of county council. But that's what we want to do, right?
Okay, so can I just, before I look for a seconder, can I just confirm with the mover then, Councillor McQueen, what's printed up there on the screen? That report FRRP 02723 financial impact assessment of Rockwood Terrace project be referred to a future special meeting of county council to provide additional information and options. Does that capture what you'd like? Okay, so it has been moved by Councillor McQueen. So now I'll be looking for a seconder. Seconded by Warden Milne. And is there any discussion then on this motion to refer? Councillor Gregg.
I'm just gonna circle this into the motion to defer, because Mr. Rodriguez had asked for questions to be held till the end of the financial reports, the two of them. So this question is part of providing additional information and options in the deferral. I'd have been hesitant to spend $6.3 million in totality in site development costs. I'm wondering what is included in site development costs and what is contributing to $6.3 million of an increase alone for site development.
Yeah, thank you very much. And there's
Okay.
one.
Just a moment, Mr. Rodriguez, there's a point of order that's being entertained here. So let me just hear that first before we move over. I believe that was Councillor McQueen I heard from.
I know you can debate on motion to defer, right? You can debate, but then that's the whole part of the motion, is to bring back that information and talk about that information. I'm just thinking that the whole part of deferring it is to bring it to another time to talk about that bigger picture. Okay. But that's sort of what's on the floor. It's not to get into the discussion, it's motion to defer it to another time, not to get into the full discussion. So that's my point of order.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McQueen. I do hear the logic coming from the other member of our task force, though, that the tail end of your motion is to provide additional information and options. So perhaps if we could collect what all of those questions questions are and options we would like to see in that additional information. I think that speaks true to the motion that we're entertaining at this point in time. But that said, then it wouldn't be a debate. It would be a request for more information that you wish to be encompassed into the additional information. So Councillor Gregg, you've posed your question. Are there any other questions that you would like to pose? Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the motion to defer? Yeah, it's just, I can't quite see that screen there. Yeah. Okay, so yes, so it is a motion that we, motion to be deferred to a future special meeting of council. That's correct, the wording that you. Okay, I'll go to CEO Wingrove, but just so that we're clear, it's reading be referred as opposed to deferred, being referred. So where this is actually a motion to refer, not a motion to defer. Slight difference. CEO Wingrove.
I'm not sure that it needs to be in the motion, but I do want it on the floor and in everybody's mind that this meeting has to be held and a decision taken before that March 31st deadline. Because as of now, the consultants continue to work on putting together construction drawings and meeting all the deadlines in order to meet the provincial target. So if they are going to continue on with that work, and I would suggest that they don't stop until we've had an opportunity to have that discussion. We do need to be clear that this discussion needs to happen at early next week at the very latest. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just ask the clerk for any clarification of the process that we need to make sure in terms of the timing so that we have adequate time in terms of giving notice as well as meeting that March 31st deadline.
So just to confirm, for a special meeting of council, we do require at least 48 hours notice of a special meeting.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go over to Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a council meeting coming up on Thursday. Based on the information I just heard, I guess I look to staff to see if the information that we were provided with today could be summarized and brought back to our meeting on Thursday. The 31st is approaching quickly, and organizing a special meeting may not be that easy when we are meeting on Thursday in light of what Tara just said. So I guess I look to our senior staff to, I hate putting them under such a time restraint and when the agenda is already out, but just knowing the information we received today, if there is time on Thursday to start that discussion, knowing that the 31st is a deadline. Thanks.
Point of clarification, Councillor Mackey, are you suggesting it be added to the agenda that's on Thursday's regular meeting? Because we would now have to meet after 5:30 p.m. on Thursday in order for us to call a special meeting.
Thanks, Madam Chair. No, I would say that we take out the special meeting part and that it be referred to the Thursday council meeting.
Okay, let me just refer over to the clerk if that's procedurally possible for us to do. Okay, thank you. There are some logistical considerations. It's possible to change the agenda of the meeting, and that would be if we extracted special and added it into the existing meeting we have on Thursday. But I would like to hear from CAO Wingrove if there's something else that we need to consider in terms of how we bring this. Not do we bring this to council, but how do we do it?
Thank you. I think we would amend Thursday's agenda then to include both an additional open and closed discussion.
Okay, I will just, yes, it is possible for us to give notice that we are revising the agenda, but the agenda would require closed session time as well as open session time. And this is a procedural adjustment to that. So I could entertain this as a friendly motion to the original one. I do see a hand from Councillor McQueen.
I understand the timing and two things is new information, is that going to be able to be provided by then? I'm sure it could be. Also, I think there is provisions under the warden that the warden has certain provisions as well to call if needed as a special meeting or emergency meeting or however, there's that provisions as well. But also council can waive the procedural bylaw with regards to less than 48 hours, but we don't have a quorum, so we can't do that in this body. So there is that part of 48 hours is in our procedure bylaw. So yeah. So anyway, as long as you can, but I know the warden have some provisions that can go outside that provisions as well. So anyway.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, if we were to go ahead and move if this report were to be referred to council on Thursday, it would be part of our regular council and committee of the whole meeting. So there would be no requirement to waive any procedure and that 48 hours notice, because it would be incorporated into our general regularly scheduled meeting. We would likely ask council to approve that amendment to the agenda and add it by a 2/3 vote. So that should capture all the requirements.
Okay, so are there any other procedural questions? Okay, so with that then, to change the wording, maybe if we could get the wording up on the screen as well. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I just want to confirm, first of all, the wording. So it's now reading the potential before I go to the mover and the seconder. It's reading now. Oh, there's stuff in the way there. Okay, thank you. That the project, that the financial impact assessment be referred to a future meeting of county council to provide additional information and options. So now it's just clean. It doesn't refer to the time deadline, but it's understood it has to happen before March 31st. So I'm going to ask then the mover. Oh, wait, no, this is actually, the mover was Councillor McQueen. I'm going to ask you if you are comfortable with that. He is indicating yes. And the seconder, Warden Milne, is indicating yes. So we can accept that as friendly. Now I saw a hand go up from Councillor Mackey. Question? Oh.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm just, if it's all right with the mover and the seconder, that a future meeting, which is not decisive, that it be the March 23rd, 2023 meeting.
Okay, and unless the warden is willing to call some sort of other meeting out of the blue, that would be the one that we'd have to meet at in order to get this deadline in by March 31st. So I can't see there being an issue. I'll just ask Councillor McQueen if that helps clarify his motion.
I think it's fine because it is a future meeting. I think the idea of adding it to the agenda, having 2/3 majority, I think cleans that up. We're just adding it there. But I think it's important that this passes, that a note goes out to all county councilors to, read the updated agenda because they may have already read it and not come back to it. And there's new additions. So we just have to make sure it goes out that there's new information. So yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, so Councillor McQueen, you're okay with naming the date of the future meeting? Okay, so Councillor McQueen is asking to keep it the way it is. He's the mover, so we'll have to leave it there. Yeah, I think everyone's trying to get to the same result. We just want to make sure that we're, and by bringing it and needing a 2/3 vote, it allows other members of council to identify if they need more time to digest it ahead of time, or that this is the best way to get it in front of all of council to make the decision on discussion. Councillor McQueen.
So it could say upcoming. A future upcoming meeting. I don't know if that cleans it up more. I don't know. Or if we say it, if we say March 23rd, then we'll just have to, then it'll have to be approved to be added to the agenda because that is a procedural thing. So yeah, okay, fine. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so it is now reading the specific date of March 23rd, 2023 as the future meeting. And because we've discussed that this cannot happen after March 31st, I don't think that there's any question there. I'll just confirm with our seconder, Warden Milne, we're good?
Yes.
Or okay, great. I think we spent longer talking about the process than all right, so with that, is there any further discussion on this particular motion to refer? All right, then in that case, then I would like to call this vote by a show of hands. All in favor? Any opposed? Yep, thank you. Got the virtual hand as well. Then that motion is carried. Okay, so we will be leaving the other motion to bring it to the full council should the council agree by 2/3 vote to add it to the agenda on Thursday of this week, which would be March 23rd. Okay, and that allows us to move on then to correspondence. So there is a motion that correspondence from the Ministry of Long-Term Care regarding approval under the Long-Term Care Home Capital Development Funding Policy 2022 for Rockwood Terrace dated February 28th, 2023 be received for information. May I ask for a mover and a seconder that we receive this? I see it moved by Councillor McKay, seconded by Councillor Gregg. Any discussion on receiving? Okay, then in that case, then I'll ask for a raise of hands of all in favor. Thank you, and that motion is carried. Okay, so we did not have any other business added to the agenda at the beginning. Is there any other business that we need to consider at this time? Councillor McQueen.
Just in summary, we've had a really good discussion today. Thanks staff for bringing forward the information that was provided. I think that's very important, but it's also very important that moving forward that we have the right information and right communication because there's going to be lots of questions asked.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, so our next meeting date will be to be determined, and certainly that will be part of what follows for our task force will be in response to what happens at our council meeting on Thursday. So in that case, then I can ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. So it's recommended that we adjourn this task force meeting at 5:14 p.m. It's been moved by Warden Milne, seconded by Councillor McKay. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Yeah. Yeah. You try living with a name like Matrasovs. Then yeah. Thank you very much, everyone.